The official story claims Anne Boleyn was rotten, adulterous, witch. Her body was deformed. Historians reported a hideous cyst. They claimed she bore a monstrous child. This is the history we were sold. The contemporary records tell a very different story. Descriptions from her lifetime mention a slim figure. She had dark eyes, dark hair, and fashionable clothes. None of these accounts mentioned an extra finger. No one mentioned a cyst or a deformed baby. The first claim of a monstrous body came 49 years after her death. A Catholic writer, Nicholas Sander, invented the detail in 1585. He had a political agenda. Sander described a projecting tooth, a large wart, that famous extra finger. Sander never met Anne Boleyn. He was a small child when she died. By then, her head had been separated from her body for decades. She could not speak to defend herself. The women who dressed and bathed her were also gone. A woman executed at 35 became uglier every year she remained dead. Her anatomy was rewritten to justify a political execution. The usual story starts with a simple contrast. Catherine of Aragon is framed as noble and dignified. Anne Boleyn is the seductive, poisonous new woman. The Catholic world needed a villain for the break with Rome. Anne's body became a vessel for that national blame. Before her rise, the court atmosphere was different. Anne had served in the sophisticated French royal household. She returned, bringing French fashions and music. Observers called her stylish and quick-witted. Some noted a sallow complexion. She was not conventionally beautiful, but she was captivating. What mattered most was her powerful presence. Men noticed when Anne entered a room. The women noticed too, especially the ones seeking the same attention. At Henry's court, beauty was competition and currency. Young women measured one another relentlessly. Height, hair, and complexions were compared in private. Anne understood the game completely. French training taught her how to play it well. She used well-chosen colours and flattering necklines. Jewellery was deployed like a weapon. The resentment began immediately. Older, established families watched a minor gentlewoman pull the king away. She was separating him from the long-standing Spanish queen. Every step higher for Anne pushed someone else closer to ruin. That jealousy hardened into lethal stories when the axe finally fell. The standard Tudor tale is simple. Anne dazzled Henry and broke his first marriage. She failed to give him a living son. She paid for it with her head. Thomas Cromwell is credited with her destruction. Men plotted, men accused, men judged, men swung the sword. Women appear only as decoration in this narrative. Anne is the temptress. Jane Seymour waits discreetly in the wings. The first doubt appears when we examine the silence in the records. Servants who worked closest to Anne wrote about her temper and piety. They mentioned her elegant hands and long neck. They commented on her French sleeves and jewels. None of them mentioned a sixth finger. Modern accounts repeat the deformity as clinical fact. They claim Anne Boleyn had an extra finger. The detail comes from that single hostile writer in 1585. It is not found in Tudor court reports. Court records from her 1536 trial list every accusation gathered: adultery with 5 men, incest with her brother, plots against the king's life. Witchcraft was heavily implied. If the authorities had any physical mark of the devil, it would have been central to the case. Nothing appears in the indictments. They attack her morals, not her anatomy. There is a simple, brutal reason for this silence. Anne's enemies could not call her deformed during her lifetime. Too many people saw her daily in low-cut gowns. Maids dressed her every morning. Ladies held her hands during embroidery. Any obvious extra finger was impossible to hide. The lie waited for the safer moment after her death. The female dynamics around Anne were as vicious as anything the men did. Catherine of Aragon's ladies watched the king's attention shift. Their queen's body had endured miscarriages and stillbirths. Her figure softened with age and grief. Anne arrived, slender and energetic. She flirted in a controlled way. The contrast was immediate and brutal. Many women at court chose sides. Some despised Anne and clung to Catherine. Others circled Anne, hoping for promotion when she rose. Older women scolded the younger ones for copying French fashions. Younger women ignored them and copied Anne anyway. Friendship and rivalry became indistinguishable. When Henry finally crowned Anne, resentments hardened. The Queen's household split immediately. Every gain and every loss had a female face attached. In that atmosphere, beauty was a weapon. Complimenting Anne meant betraying Catherine. Admiring Catherine meant rejecting Anne's new power. Women had to perform loyalty to one body by criticizing the other. Female betrayal did not wait for the fall. It helped create the conditions for it. The household records name the women in Anne's most private world: Margaret Lee, Elizabeth Stoner, Mary Howard, Marjorie Horsman. These women did not just carry her train in public. They saw her first in the morning and last at night. They knew when she menstruated. They knew when she miscarried. They knew when the king slept with her and when he avoided her bed. Loyalty was never simple for these attendants. Some were Boleyn kin, deeply attached to Anne. Others came from families who had served Catherine. They were forced to change badges at the king's command. Their pay depended on obedience, not affection. The bedchamber was both sanctuary and a surveillance state. The queen almost never slept alone. Ladies and maids shared her room, sometimes her very bed. They heard her mutter in her sleep. They saw her cry through the pain of loss. They helped her change undergarments stained with blood after a miscarriage. They watched her kneel in prayer when Henry ignored her door. Mary Shelton had once attracted the king's eye. Mary Zouche had ties to Catherine's household. Elizabeth Stoner, the mother of the maids, controlled the young girls. She knew which secrets could be repeated safely. In public, Anne's rooms were lively. Music, laughter, flirtatious talk. Men like Henry Norris and Francis Weston visited often. The Queen teased them. They teased her back. This was courtly game, but the words stayed with the women folding gowns nearby. When Anne joked a man looked for dead men's shoes, she was overheard. When she told a gentleman that a physical touch would never happen again, the tone was noted. These small moments became evidence under later interrogation. The women dressing her had the best seat in the house. Life inside the Queen's chambers involved more than just silk and jewels. It involved blood, sweat, and panic. Anne's ladies saw her body at its most vulnerable. They changed her linen after heavy bleeding. They sat beside her during cramps and clotting. Physicians offered advice that rarely helped. When she miscarried a male fetus in January 1536, the timing was catastrophic. Hostile chroniclers hinted at a monstrous deformity. But her ladies saw the truth. They saw the blood, the small body, the Queen's face grey with shock. Some comforted her. Some whispered the loss was God's judgment. They carried those images into later conversations. A maid who held Anne's hand might later report that the Queen raged. These words, filtered through other ears, became signs of a guilty woman. Her pain became part of the case against her. Henry's own health was failing around this time. He was gaining weight. He struggled with oozing ulcers on his legs. His body was failing. He blamed women. He refused to look at his own decay. When Henry decided Anne must be gone, Cromwell weaponized her private world. He did not start with counsellors. He turned her own rooms inside out. The women chosen to attend Anne in the Tower were not her friends. They were selected precisely because they could be pressured. Anne complained that her new ladies were those she had not loved. Their orders were simple: watch her, listen, report every word. Anne's tears, her hysterical laughter, her panic, none of it stayed private. Her own attendants became live recording devices. Women who had shared her chamber watched her break in the tower. They gave her private words to the men building the case. It was not always malice. Often it was terror. A maid facing royal officers understood the stakes. If she protected the Queen, she risked execution. If she repeated gossip, she might survive to serve the next Queen. Loyalty shrank under that pressure. Self-preservation expanded. Anne sits in her chamber, frustrated and unstable. Henry has stopped visiting her bed. Her body has failed to produce a son. Her ladies undress her at night. They see the signs of her lost child. Anne vents her anger in the private room. She complains about the king's moods. She mocks his clothes. She jokes about his skill in bed. The women in the room laugh. Some laugh genuinely. Some laugh because the Queen requires it. Some laugh while memorizing every word. Later, those laughs turn to evidence. A lady reports the Queen's words about Norris. Another remembers Anne joking that Weston professed love. A mother of the maids testifies that the girls heard unfit talk. No knife was used, only remembered words, sharpened like blades. Male judges repeated them as proof of adultery. The women behind those phrases simply adjusted their stories to survive. The irony is stark. The woman accused of physical deformity had a body strong enough to attract the king. She carried multiple pregnancies. The people describing her body as monstrous wrote from safe distances. The first big reveal, the deformity myth, conveniently shifts blame away from male failure. Henry VIII could not admit his own body was the problem. His own health was failing with age and injury. Multiple pregnancies across 2 marriages ended badly. Admitting his fertility was flawed threatened the entire structure of his power. Calling Anne's body cursed solved the problem. Her womb produced monsters. The narrative protected male power while punishing female ambition. The second big reveal. Anne's own ladies supplied Cromwell with her most dangerous material. Her jokes about dead men's shoes, her complaints about Henry's behaviour, her flirtatious exchanges, all remembered, repeated, reframed. By the spring of 1536, 4 brutal truths had aligned. Anne's ladies had provided the ammunition. Some of the women had built quiet escape routes. Ties to noble families made it possible to step off a sinking ship. The regime deliberately weaponized female intimacy. The women who undressed her became the key witnesses against her. The third big reveal. The women who attended her execution performed one final cruel theatre. They accompanied her to the scaffold. They removed her headdress. They tucked her hair away from the sword. After the sword struck, they gathered the severed head and bloody body. They put their queen into a rough wooden box meant for arrows. Then they walked away alive. Several of them returned to court. Some served Jane Seymour. Female intimacy in the bedchamber did not guarantee loyalty on the scaffold. The pattern repeats across royal history. When a woman threatens the system, the focus shifts to her flesh. Her face becomes wrong. Her womb becomes cursed. Blame moves from decisions and politics to anatomy. The official myth says Anne Boleyn's body betrayed her. The evidence shows something darker. It was not her body that betrayed her. It was the people around her. The betrayal was quiet, but relentless. Women who might have recognized the injustice instead used Anne as a moral scarecrow against other women. Henry VIII was responsible for the political death, but the records whisper that the first cracks in Anne's position began in her own bedchamber. Among women who laced her gowns and heard her complaints. They were the ones who helped build the story that killed her. Not with swords, with words. Another body will carry another dynasty's lies.